By the time Ryan Donald's armored SUV pulled up to the shuttered diner where I'd scraped grease for 3 years, he'd already investigated every corner of my life, paid off every debt I owed, and decided I was his responsibility. Mine, whether I wanted it or not. His father had tested the city's empathy by sitting alone in the freezing rain, and I was the only person who stopped. Now the sun was here to claim me, and I was about to learn that one act of kindness in a cruel city could trap you in a world more dangerous than poverty ever was. It started with grease. That was the only thing I could smell. It coated the back of my throat, clung to my hair, and had seemingly seeped into the very pores of my skin. It was the scent of 12 hours spent scraping leftovers off chipped ceramic plates and dodging Jeff's malicious glare every time I moved too slow or smiled too much at the wrong customer. "Table 9 needs a refill, Hall," Jeff barked from behind the counter, his voice dripping with contempt. "What are you waiting for? A written invitation?" I didn't answer. I just gritted my teeth, grabbed the coffee pot, and forced a polite expression onto my face as I walked over. My legs felt heavy, like they were filled with lead shot, but I refused to limp. Showing weakness in front of Jeff was like bleeding in a shark tank. I needed to get out of here. I needed fresh air. I needed to go home, open my laptop, and lose myself in the digital lectures on art history that were the only bright spot in my grim reality. 20 minutes later, I was pushing through the heavy glass door, the bell jingling a mocking farewell behind me. The Chicago wind hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't just cold, it was predatory. It whipped my hair across my face and instantly bit through the thin fabric of my uniform. I pulled my threadbare coat tighter around myself, burying my chin in the scarf that had seen better decades, let alone better days. I checked my watch. 11:38 p.m. My car was parked 3 blocks away in the only lot I could afford, the sketchy one behind the abandoned warehouse where the streetlight had been broken for months. But what he didn't know was that someone was watching. I started to walk fast, keeping my head down against the gale. The city was screaming tonight. Sirens wailed in the distance, a constant, dissonant harmony to the aggressive honking of taxis and the rumble of late-night delivery trucks. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the wet pavement. It had been raining for hours, a relentless, freezing downpour that turned the gutters into rushing rivers of black sludge. I navigated the puddles by memory, hopping over the cracked pavement near the liquor store, skirting the blocked drain by the shuttered laundromat. I was half a block from my car when I saw him. If you've ever felt invisible, been told you're not enough, or had someone make you feel worthless, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now and comment where you're watching from. We're building a family of people. At first, I thought it was a discarded mannequin from the closed department store down the street. But then the figure moved, or rather slumped, against the iron bench near the bus shelter. He was sitting perfectly still in the pouring rain, utterly soaked, staring straight ahead like he'd forgotten where he was. A businessman. Expensive suit. Silver hair plastered to his skull. Alone. I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat, forming a white cloud that was instantly snatched away by the wind. "Don't do it, Sadie," I whispered to myself. "You have an exam tomorrow. You're exhausted. Just keep walking." One wrong move and everything would fall apart. I took a step toward my car, my eyes fixed on the rusted Honda in the distance. I could see it, keys already in my hand. I could make it if I just kept moving. Then I saw his hands. They were shaking, not from cold, but from something else. Fear. Confusion. The kind of trembling that comes when someone realizes they've been left behind. He looked lost. Not just geographically lost, but the kind of lost that makes a person forget their own name. "Damn it," I hissed through my chattering teeth. I pivoted on my heel and walked toward him. Not toward my car, not toward safety, toward the soaking wet stranger who could be dangerous, could be drunk, could be anyone. But he looked terrified, and I couldn't leave him. "Sir?" I called out, my voice barely audible over the rain. "Sir, are you all right?" This choice would define the rest of his life. He turned his head slowly. His eyes, sharp, piercing, impossibly clear despite his confusion, locked onto mine. And that's when I made the choice that would change everything. "Get in," I said, pulling my car keys from my pocket and gesturing toward the parking lot. "I'll drive you safe." The old man settled into my passenger seat with the careful movements of someone who'd spent a lifetime learning to conceal pain. Water dripped from his expensive suit onto my cracked upholstery, but he didn't seem to notice. He just stared straight ahead through the rain-streaked windshield, his jaw tight, his hands folded precisely in his lap. I turned the heat up as high as it would go, which wasn't saying much. My Honda's heater had 2 settings, barely warm and broken. Tonight, I got barely warm. "Where can I take you?" I asked, pulling out of the parking lot. The wipers scraped across the glass in a rhythmic squeak that filled the silence. "North," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "Lakeshore Drive. I'll direct you." He knew something that no one else in the building did. I nodded and merged onto the main road, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, just the occasional taxi and a few late-night delivery trucks. The rain came down harder, turning the city into a blur of neon and shadow. "What's your name?" he asked after several minutes of silence. "Sadie. Sadie Hall." "Sadie." He repeated it like he was testing the weight of it. "That's a good name. Strong." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just focused on driving. The windshield kept fogging up despite the defrost, and I had to keep wiping it with my sleeve. "Do you always pick up strangers in the rain, Sadie Hall?" I glanced at him. His face was turned toward me now, and in the passing streetlights, I could see his eyes were sharp, assessing, not confused anymore, not lost, watching. "No," I admitted. "Never, actually. You're my first." "Then why tonight? Why me?" Her next words hit him harder than any bullet. I thought about lying, about giving him some safe, sanitized answer. But something about the way he asked, direct, without judgment, made me tell the truth. "Because you look scared. And alone. And I know what that feels like." I swallowed hard. I couldn't just leave you there. He was quiet for a long time. The only sound was the rain and the squeaking wipers and the occasional hiss of tires on wet pavement as we drove north along Lakeshore Drive. The lake was invisible in the darkness, but I could feel it out there, vast and cold. "What do you do, Sadie? For work?" "I'm a waitress." "At a diner downtown." I tried not to sound bitter, but some of it leaked through anyway. "It's temporary. I'm studying art history online. I'm going to finish my degree and work in a museum someday." "Art history." There was something in his voice. Approval, maybe, or interest. "What period?" But this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Renaissance, mostly. I love the way they captured light. The way they made paint look like fabric, like flesh, like something real and alive. I felt my cheeks warm. I was babbling. "Sorry, I get excited about it." "Don't apologize for passion. It's rare." He gestured toward an upcoming exit. "Take this one," then left. I followed his directions, and suddenly the neighborhood changed. The buildings grew taller, more pristine. Trees lined the streets despite the urban setting. Gates appeared, security cameras, wealth that didn't just whisper. It roared. "Next right. Through those gates." I slowed as we approached massive iron gates set into a stone wall that seemed to stretch for an entire block. A guardhouse stood to one side, and two men in dark suits emerged before I could even roll down my window. That moment, everything in the room changed. One of them leaned down, saw the old man in my passenger seat, and his entire demeanor shifted. He stepped back and spoke rapidly into a radio. The gate swung open without a word. My stomach dropped. Oh God, who was this man? Straight ahead, he said calmly, as if this were completely normal. To the main house. I drove slowly up a cobblestone driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges and antique lampposts that cast pools of golden light through the rain. The house, no, the mansion, the estate, rose out of the darkness like something from a movie. 3 stories of limestone and glass, with columns and balconies and more windows than I could count. I stopped in front of the main entrance, where another man in a suit waited under an enormous umbrella. What she found in the envelope froze her in place. "This is where I leave you," the old man said. But he didn't move immediately. He turned to look at me fully for the first time. "Thank you, Sadie Hall, for your kindness, for not asking questions, for seeing a person who needed help instead of a situation you should avoid." I shook my head. Anyone would have done the same. "No." His voice was firm. "They wouldn't. Most people drove past me tonight. You stopped." He opened the door, and the man with the umbrella stepped forward. Before he climbed out, the old man looked back at me one more time. "You have a good heart. Don't let this city take that from you." Then he was gone, walking up the stone steps with the umbrella bearer beside him. The massive front doors opened, spilling warm light onto the wet driveway, and he disappeared inside. I sat there for a moment, my engine idling, staring at the house. A security guard approached my window and made a polite gesture indicating I should leave. I nodded and put the car in reverse, navigating back down the long driveway toward the gates. He couldn't explain why, but danger was closing in. As I drove home through the rain, exhaustion crashing over me in waves, I tried to process what had just happened. I'd picked up a wealthy stranger and driven him to what was clearly one of the most expensive estates in Chicago. He'd asked me strange questions, tested me somehow, though I didn't understand why. But it didn't matter. I'd done a good deed, helped someone who needed it. That was enough. I had no idea that everything had just changed, that the old man in the expensive suit had just decided my fate, that by tomorrow morning, my entire world would be turned upside down by a man I hadn't even met yet. A man named Ryan Donald, his son. What followed next was completely unexpected. I slept for 4 hours and woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My alarms screamed at 6 a.m., dragging me out of a dream where I was drowning in coffee and grease. I showered in lukewarm water because my building's boiler was broken again, pulled on my uniform, and headed out into the gray Chicago morning. The rain had stopped, but the city was still soaked. Puddles reflecting the flat winter sky. I took the bus downtown, standing room only, pressed between a man who smelled like cigarettes and a woman talking too loudly on her phone about her divorce. My exam was at noon. If I could survive the morning shift, I'd have just enough time to review my notes on Caravaggio before the test. I got off at my usual stop and walked the 3 blocks to the diner, my mind already running through the morning routine. Prep the coffee station, check the condiment bottles, smile at the regulars, survive Jeff's mood. Same as always, except it wasn't. He realized he wasn't alone. Someone else had arrived. I saw them from half a block away. 3 men in dark suits standing in front of the diner's entrance. Not customers, not delivery guys. They stood too still, too aware, scanning the street with the kind of attention that made my survival instincts start screaming. The diner's lights were off. The neon open sign that had been flickering for 6 years was dark. I slowed down, my heart picking up speed. What was happening? Had there been a break-in? A health inspection? My mind ran through possibilities, none of them good. As I got closer, One of the men noticed me. He said something to the others, and all three turned to watch my approach. I almost turned around, almost ran. But I needed this job. I needed to know what was happening. "Excuse me," I said, stopping a few feet away. "I work here. Why is the diner closed?" Someone in the room was lying. But who? The tallest one, a man with a scar running through his left eyebrow, studied me with cold calculation. "Name?" "Sadie Hall. I'm a waitress. My shift starts at 7. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then nodded. "Wait here." "Wait for what? What's going on?" He didn't answer. He just turned his back and spoke quietly into his phone. The other two men continued watching me like I was a threat they were evaluating. Then the door burst open and Jeff came storming out. But this wasn't even the most shocking part. His face was red, his tie was loose, and he was carrying a cardboard box filled with what looked like personal items from his office. When he saw me, his expression twisted into something ugly. "You," he spat, stopping directly in front of me. "This is your fault." I took a step back. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play stupid, Sadie. You did something. You must have done something." His hands were shaking, making the box rattle. "I've been fired. The diner's been sold. And somehow, you're still employed." My brain couldn't process what he was saying. Sold? The diner was sold? When? "Last night. Cash purchase. The new owner took possession at midnight." Jeff's voice was rising, attracting attention from people passing on the sidewalk. And the first thing he did, the very first thing, was fire me. 30 years I've worked here. 30 years. And I'm out on my ass while you, the girl who can barely carry a tray without dropping it, get to keep your job. Everyone thought the deal went smoothly, but they were wrong. "I don't understand." "Neither do I." He was shouting now. "But I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out what you did, who you slept with, what deal you made." "That's enough." The tall man with the scar stepped between us, his presence a wall of contained violence. "Mr. Henderson, you've been compensated generously for your termination. I suggest you leave. Now." Jeff looked like he wanted to argue, but something in the man's eyes made him reconsider. He shot me one more look of pure hatred, then turned and walked away, the box clutched to his chest. I stood there, my mind reeling. The diner was sold. Jeff was fired. And apparently, I still had a job. None of it made any sense. "Ms. Hall," the scarred man turned to me. "I need you to remain here. Someone will be arriving shortly to speak with you." "About what?" I didn't do anything. I don't know what's happening." "You will." He checked his watch. "He'll be here in 2 minutes." His next decision would decide whether he lived or died. He? Who was he? I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite my coat. The other pedestrians were giving us a wide berth now, crossing the street to avoid whatever scene was unfolding. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was stuck, frozen in place by confusion and the growing dread that whatever was happening was far bigger than I understood. A car turned onto our street. Not just any car. A matte black armored SUV with windows so dark I couldn't see inside. It moved slowly, deliberately, like a predator that had already caught its prey and was just deciding when to strike. It pulled up to the curb directly in front of me and stopped. The engine purred, low and expensive. The scarred man moved to the rear door and placed his hand on the handle, waiting. The door opened. A man stepped out, and the air itself seemed to change. In that moment, the entire balance of power flipped. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He wore a burgundy coat over a black suit, tailored so perfectly it looked like a second skin. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Dark, intense, calculating. The same eyes I'd seen last night in the rain. Mr. Donanold's eyes. This was his son. It had to be. The resemblance was unmistakable, but where the old man had been gentle and kind, this man radiated cold, controlled power. He looked at me the way a collector looks at a painting he's just acquired. "Sadie Hall," he said. Not a question. A statement. His voice was deep, smooth, absolute. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. He took 3 steps toward me, closing the distance between us with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "My name is Ryan Donald," he said. "And as of this moment, you belong to me." What he discovered next changed everything. The world tilted sideways. I heard the words, understood them individually, but together they made no sense. What? It was all I could manage. Ryan Donald didn't repeat himself. He just stood there, watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes, waiting for my brain to catch up to reality. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking. "What are you talking about? I don't belong to anyone. I don't even know you." "You know my father." He said it simply, like it explained everything. "Last night, you picked him up in the rain. You drove him home. You asked for nothing in return." The old man, Mr. Donanold. This was about him, but there was one thing he didn't know about his closest ally. "He needed help," I said. "I helped him, that's all. That doesn't mean—" "My father," Ryan interrupted, his voice cutting through my protests like a blade, "was testing this city. He does it periodically. He dresses in his finest clothes and positions himself in vulnerable situations to see who stops, who helps, who sees a person instead of an opportunity." He took another step closer. "Last night, 47 people walked past him. 3 cars nearly hit him. 1 man spat at him, thinking he was homeless despite the suit. I remembered the taxi, the sedan, the way people had just kept walking. My stomach turned. "You were the only one who stopped," Ryan continued. "The only one who helped without asking who he was, or what you'd get in return. The only one who saw my father as a human being who needed help. So?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. That's basic decency. It doesn't mean I belong to you. It doesn't mean anything." And suddenly he realized he was being played. "It means everything." Ryan's expression didn't change, but something in his voice shifted. "My father called me at midnight last night. He told me he'd met someone remarkable. Someone pure in a city that devours purity. He asked me to find you. To protect you. To ensure that your kindness doesn't get you killed in the world you don't understand you just entered." "I didn't enter anything. I gave someone a ride home." "You entered my world the moment you touched my father." Ryan pulled out his phone, typed something, and held it up so I could see the screen. It was a photo of me, taken from a security camera, standing in the rain beside Mr. Donanold. The timestamp read 11:51 p.m. Every security camera in the city is connected to my network. Every face, every car, every movement tracked and cataloged. I knew who you were by 12:15 a.m. I knew where you lived, where you worked, where you went to school, who you owed money to, and what your dreams were by 1 o'clock a.m. There was one detail everyone missed. The invasion of privacy should have made me angry. Instead, I just felt cold, exposed, like I was standing naked in front of a stranger who could see every scar and weakness. "This diner," Ryan continued, pocketing his phone, "was bought at 1:30 a.m. for 3 times its market value. Your manager, Jeff Henderson, was terminated at 2 a.m. with a severance package that ensures he'll never work in this city again. I own this building now. I own the businesses on either side. I own your employment contract, which means Sadie Hall. I own your immediate future. You can't just... People aren't property. You're not property. You're a responsibility. He said it like there was a difference. My father saw something in you worth protecting. I don't question his judgment. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with me. You're going to be taken care of. Your school will be paid for. Your debts will be erased. You'll want for nothing. If people like Jeff Henderson, who treat others like garbage, make your blood boil like they do mine, hit that subscribe button and join us. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Let's stand together against everyone who's ever made someone feel worthless. I don't want your money. The words came out fierce, surprising even me. I don't need to be taken care of. I've been taking care of myself just fine. Have you? Ryan's eyes flicked down to my worn uniform, my cheap coat, the shoes with holes I'd covered with duct tape. It wasn't cruel. It was just observational. But it stung like a slap. You work 12-hour shifts in a place that treats you like garbage. You eat ramen for dinner because you can't afford anything else. You study on a laptop held together with electrical tape. You're one missed bus, one unexpected expense, one bad day away from losing everything. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering security. Stability. A life where you don't have to choose between eating and paying rent. My eyes were burning. I refused to let him see me cry. And what do you get out of this? Nobody does something like this for nothing. He should have walked away, but then he saw it. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered across his face. You're right. I get peace of mind. I get to honor my father's request. And I get to ensure that the one person in this city with genuine kindness doesn't get crushed by it. I'm not some charity project. No. You're a test you passed that 99% of people fail. That makes you rare, valuable, worth protecting. He gestured to the SUV. Get in the car, Sadie. We'll discuss the details somewhere more private. And if I say no? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then you walk away. I'll have the diner transferred back to its previous owner by this afternoon. Jeff will have his job back by tomorrow, and you'll return to the life you had yesterday. He paused. But you won't be safe. Because now you're known. Now you're on the radar of everyone who pays attention to my movements. And trust me, they'll see you as a weakness to exploit or a mystery to solve. Either way, you'll be a target. But the real question was, who planned it? The threat was delivered so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that it took me a moment to understand what he'd just said. By helping his father, I'd painted a target on my back, and my only protection was the man who'd just claimed ownership of my life. I looked at the diner, at the dark windows, at the men in suits watching our conversation with professional detachment, at the city around me that had always been beautiful and terrible and indifferent. I thought about the old man's eyes last night, the way he'd looked at me with something like hope, the way he'd thanked me for my kindness. I want my dignity, I said quietly. Whatever this is, whatever you're planning, I want to be treated like a person, not a possession. I want my voice to matter. I want respect. Ryan studied me for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. You have my word. This single decision gave him the upper hand again. I stared at his hand, knowing that taking it would change everything. Knowing I didn't really have a choice. Knowing that the moment I'd stopped for an old man in the rain, my old life had ended. I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, absolute. Get in the car, Sadie. Ryan said again, gentler this time. Let's go home. The apartment was obscene. That was the only word I could think of as Ryan led me through the door of what he casually referred to as his city residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan from what had to be the 40th floor at least. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, all clean lines and expensive materials. Everything was white or black or chrome, sleek and cold and perfect. I stood in the entrance, still wearing my diner uniform, and felt like I'd tracked mud into a cathedral. Marcus will show you to your room, Ryan said, gesturing to the scarred man who'd followed us up. You'll find clothes in your size in the closet. Shower, change, rest. We'll talk when you're ready. Something didn't add up, and the truth was darker than he expected. My room? I repeated stupidly. Yes. East wing, private bathroom, walk-in closet, view of the lake. Ryan was already moving toward what looked like a home office, pulling out his phone. You'll have full access to the apartment except my office and the security room. If you need anything, press the button by your bed. Someone will respond within 60 seconds. He said it all so casually, like this was normal, like I was supposed to just accept that I now lived in a penthouse with a man I'd met 20 minutes ago. Wait. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Stop. Just stop for a second. Ryan paused, his hand on the office door handle. He turned to look at me, one eyebrow raised in polite inquiry. I can't. I gestured helplessly at the apartment, at him, at everything. This is insane. You can't just kidnap me and install me in your apartment like a pet you decided to adopt. You came willingly, because you said I'd be in danger if I didn't. For the first time, he wasn't in control. You would be. He said it so matter-of-factly. I wasn't lying. That's not the point. I could feel my voice rising, but I couldn't stop it. The point is, you're treating me like I'm something you acquired, like I'm a problem you solved by throwing money at it. Isn't that what you needed? Money? Security? What I needed was respect. I took a step toward him, my hands clenched into fists. What I needed was to be asked instead of told. What I needed was to feel like my opinion mattered in the decisions being made about my life. Something shifted in Ryan's expression. Not anger, not irritation. Interest, maybe. Like I'd said something unexpected. Go on, he said quietly. What she said next shattered his trust instantly. I'm not a charity case, I continued, the words pouring out now that I'd started. I'm not some poor girl who needs a rich man to save her. Yes, I work at a diner. Yes, I'm broke. Yes, my life is hard. But it's my life. I earned every single thing I have. I worked for it. I sacrificed for it. And you don't get to take that away from me just because you have more money and more power and you decided I'm worth protecting. Ryan leaned against his office door, his arms crossed, watching me with those dark, calculating eyes. What do you want, Sadie? The question threw me. What? You're angry. You're scared. You feel like you've lost control. I understand that. So tell me, what do you want? How do I fix this? I opened my mouth, then closed it. What did I want? To go back to yesterday when my life was simple and hard and mine? To erase the moment I'd stopped for an old man in the rain? To wake up and find out this was all some bizarre dream? He thought it was over, until he noticed something strange. I want my dignity, I said finally. I want to keep studying. I want to finish my degree. I want to work for what I achieve, not have it handed to me. And I want, my voice cracked slightly, I want to be more than someone's good deed, more than a test your father set that I happened to pass. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then he pushed off the door and walked toward me. I forced myself not to step back, even though every instinct screamed at me to maintain distance from this dangerous, overwhelming man. He stopped a foot away, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. You want to earn your place here? Yes. You want to maintain your independence even while accepting my protection? Yes. You want to be seen as an equal, not a project? Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. Hidden in the files was a secret that could destroy them all. Ryan studied my face for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, deliberately, he held out his hand. Not to shake, to offer. Then teach me, he said. I blinked. What? Teach me. You're studying art history. You love Renaissance painting. You talked about light and brushwork and making paint look alive. His expression didn't change, but something in his voice softened. I've spent my entire life in a world of violence and numbers and power plays. I've never been to a museum unless it was to meet someone. I've never looked at a painting and seen anything but expensive decoration. I don't understand beauty for beauty's sake. I don't understand passion that has nothing to do with profit or survival. He stepped closer, his hand still extended between us. Stay here. Be safe. Let me ensure you finish your degree and never have to worry about rent or food or Jeff's cruelty again. In exchange, teach me about your world. Show me what you see when you look at art. Help me understand what moves you. Give me a glimpse of something beyond the life I've always known. From here on, the rules of the game changed. I stared at his hand, my mind racing. It was a deal, a transaction, but it was also respect. He was acknowledging that I had something valuable to offer beyond just being someone he protected. He was giving me a role beyond victim or charity case. For how long? I asked. As long as it takes. For what? For me to understand. Or for you to feel safe leaving. Whichever comes first. His hand didn't waver. But I warn you, Sadie, I don't learn quickly when it comes to things like beauty and art. You might be stuck with me for a while. Was that a joke? Was Ryan Donald actually attempting humor? I looked at his hand, then at his face, then back at his hand. This was insane. All of it. But it was also the only option that let me keep some semblance of control over my life. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay, I'll teach you. But this is temporary. When I'm done with my degree, when I feel safe again, I get to decide what happens next. My choice, not yours. Agreed. Ryan's hand closed around mine, sealing the deal. His grip was warm, firm, careful not to crush. Welcome home, Sadie Hall. Let's see if you can teach a monster to appreciate beauty. He didn't realize this moment would come back to haunt him. He said it lightly, but I heard the truth underneath. He really did think he was a monster. And maybe he was. But monsters could learn. Monsters could change. Couldn't they? I spent the first 3 days in a daze, moving through the apartment like a ghost, trying to understand the shape of my new reality. My room was bigger than my old apartment. The bathroom had heated floors. The closet was full of clothes that fit perfectly, all in styles I would have chosen if I'd had money. Someone had even included my favorite brand of cheap drugstore shampoo next to the expensive bottles, a detail that made my throat tight. Ryan was rarely there. He left early, sometimes before dawn, and returned late, smelling like cigarette smoke and danger. He never explained where he went or what he did, and I didn't ask. We had an unspoken agreement. I wouldn't question his world, and he wouldn't force me to participate in it. But he had no idea a bigger force was controlling everything. But on the 4th night, he knocked on my door at 8 p.m. with a laptop and a question. "I'm ready for my first lesson," he said, standing in my doorway like he needed permission to enter his own apartment. "If you're willing." I'd been lying on my bed, reading about Caravaggio's use of chiaroscuro, still in the jeans and sweater I'd put on that morning. I looked at Ryan, who was somehow still wearing his suit despite the late hour, and felt a surge of something that might have been purpose. "Okay," I said, sitting up. "Come in." He entered carefully, like he was entering a sacred space, and sat in the chair by my desk. I sat on the bed, pulling my laptop onto my knees. "Where do we start?" he asked. This was only the beginning of a much bigger war. I thought for a moment, then pulled up an image. Here. This is Caravaggio's The Calling of St. Matthew. It's one of the most famous paintings in history. Tell me what you see. Ryan leaned forward, studying the screen. I watched his face, trying to gauge his reaction. He was quiet for a long time, his expression unreadable. "I see people in a room," he said finally. "One man is pointing. The others look surprised. There's light coming from the right side." "Okay, that's the surface. Now look deeper. What's the light doing?" "Illuminating them?" "Yes, but how? Where does it fall? What does it avoid?" Ryan's eyes narrowed in concentration. "It hits the people Christ is calling. It skips over the ones still counting money. It's selective." Under the floorboard, he discovered a truth he wasn't ready for. Exactly. I felt excitement building in my chest, the way it always did when I talked about art. Caravaggio is using light to show divine selection. The light is God's grace, literally falling on the chosen while leaving the worldly in shadow. It's not just decoration. It's theology in paint. Ryan looked at the painting again, and I saw something change in his face. A softening. A curiosity. "Show me another one," he said quietly. We spent 3 hours going through paintings. I talked about Raphael's composition, Michelangelo's anatomy, Titian's color theory. Ryan asked questions that got progressively more sophisticated, his mind clearly working to understand not just what he was seeing, but why it mattered. "You love this," he said finally, closing the laptop. "Not just like it. Love it. I can hear it in your voice." I felt my cheeks warm. Yes, I know it's impractical. I know it doesn't make money or solve problems or... "It solves the problem of living in a world without beauty," Ryan interrupted. "That's not nothing, Sadie. That might be everything." He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for family. I stared at him, stunned by the gentleness in his voice. "Thank you," he said, standing. "For the lesson, for your patience, for sharing something you care about with someone who doesn't deserve it. You asked me to teach you. That means you deserve to learn." Ryan paused at the door, his hand on the frame. "Tomorrow night. Same time. I want to learn about the Baroque period. And Sadie?" He looked back at me. "Thank you for staying. I know this isn't the life you chose, but I'm grateful you're here." He left before I could respond, closing the door softly behind him. The lessons became a routine. Every night at 8 p.m., Ryan would appear at my door, sometimes still in his suit, sometimes in jeans and a t-shirt that made him look younger and less dangerous. We'd sit together, him in the chair, me on the bed, and I'd teach him about art. He didn't want revenge. He needed it. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being just about paintings. We started talking about other things, our childhoods, our fears, the choices we'd made that had led us to this strange arrangement. "My father raised me to be hard," Ryan told me one night, 2 weeks into our lessons. "Emotion was weakness. Mercy was failure. Love was a liability that your enemies would exploit." He stared at the painting on my screen, Bernini's Ecstasy of St. Teresa. "I learned those lessons well. Maybe too well." "Do you think he was wrong?" I asked quietly. "I think he was right for the world he lived in, but I'm starting to wonder if that world is the only one that exists." 3 weeks in, Ryan did something that shattered the last of my resistance. He came to my room at 7 p.m. instead of 8, dressed in a dark coat, his expression unreadable. "Get dressed," he said. "Something nice." We're going out. Out where? You'll see. We leave in 30 minutes. He had no idea the night would end in blood. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but something in his eyes stopped me. This was important. This mattered. I put on one of the dresses from the closet, a simple black number that was somehow both elegant and understated, and met him in the living room. He looked at me for a long moment, and something flickered in his expression that I couldn't name. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Then he held out his hand. "Come on, I have something to show you." We drove through the city in silence, Ryan at the wheel, no security detail following. It felt strange, intimate, like we were two normal people on a normal date, instead of a mafia boss and the girl he'd claimed as his responsibility. He pulled up in front of the Art Institute of Chicago. The museum was dark, closed for the night, but Ryan led me to a side entrance where a security guard nodded and let us through without a word. "What?" I started, but Ryan just squeezed my hand. "Trust me." For once, he wasn't thinking like a boss, but like a man about to lose everything. He led me through the dark hallways, his phone flashlight guiding the way, until we reached the European painting wing. Then he stepped aside and gestured for me to go first. I walked into the gallery, and my breath caught in my throat. The room was lit by soft spotlights, each one trained on a painting. Every piece we'd discussed over the past 3 weeks was there, illuminated like treasures in a vault. Caravaggio, Raphael, Titian, Bernini sculptures in the side galleries, an entire museum, open just for me. "How?" My voice broke. "How did you do this?" "I own 40% of the museum's endowment," Ryan said, coming to stand beside me. "I called in a favor. You've spent weeks teaching me about beauty through a laptop screen. I wanted you to see the real thing, to stand in front of the paintings you love and feel what you've been trying to make me understand." Tears were streaming down my face. I didn't even try to hide them. "Why?" I whispered. Her next words hit him harder than any bullet. Ryan turned to me, and for the first time since I'd met him, his expression was completely unguarded, vulnerable, real. "Because you gave me something no one else ever has. You showed me there's more to life than survival. You made me want to understand beauty instead of just acquiring it. You made me feel—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "You made me feel human again, Sadie. And I wanted to give you something that mattered in return." I couldn't speak. I just stood there, crying in a dark museum in front of paintings worth millions, while a dangerous man looked at me like I was the most valuable thing in the room. "Thank you," I finally managed. This is the most amazing thing anyone's ever done for me." Ryan smiled, and it transformed his face. "Then let's not waste it. Come on, tell me about the Caravaggios. Help me see what you see." He trusted her, and that was his biggest mistake. We spent 4 hours in that museum, walking from painting to painting, my voice echoing in the empty galleries as I talked about technique and meaning and why these pieces had survived centuries. Ryan listened to every word, asked thoughtful questions, and looked at the art with genuine interest instead of the calculated assessment of a collector. When we finally left, as dawn was starting to break over the lake, I realized something had shifted between us. This wasn't just a transaction anymore. This wasn't protection in exchange for education. This was something else. Something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Something that felt dangerously close to connection. The next morning, I woke up to find a package outside my door. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, expensive and pristine, with a note in Ryan's sharp handwriting. "For your thoughts on the paintings we saw, and anything else you want to remember. R." I ran my fingers over the smooth leather, something warm and terrifying unfurling in my chest. This wasn't just a gift. It was an acknowledgement that my thoughts mattered, that my perspective had value beyond our lessons. His right-hand man had been hiding something from him. I spent the morning writing, my hand cramping as I tried to capture everything I'd felt standing in front of those paintings. The way Caravaggio's light had seemed to actually glow in the darkness. The weight of history in Raphael's perfect compositions. The raw emotion in Bernini's marble faces that somehow seemed more alive than stone had any right to be. When Ryan came home that evening, earlier than usual I noticed, I was sitting in the living room with the notebook, still writing. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked, setting down his keys. "A little. I couldn't stop thinking about last night." I held up the notebook. "Thank you for this." "It's perfect. I'm glad." He loosened his tie, a gesture I'd learned meant he was transitioning from work mode to whatever version of himself he allowed at home. "Are you hungry? I thought we could order in, have our lesson over dinner instead of in your room." "That would be nice." "Are you Team Sadie and Ryan? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. This story is just getting started." We ordered Thai food, my choice, and Ryan admitted he'd never tried it, and sat together at the massive dining table that could have seated 12 but felt intimate with just the two of us. I taught him about the Dutch masters while we ate, pulling up Vermeer and Rembrandt on my laptop, explaining how they'd revolutionized the use of light in completely different ways than the Italians. "Vermeer makes light look soft," I explained, gesturing at girl with a pearl earring on my screen. "Like it's diffused through clouds or windows. Everything glows. But Rembrandt..." I switched to The Night Watch. "Rembrandt's light is dramatic, theatrical. It carves out faces from darkness. Like Caravaggio," Ryan said, leaning forward to study the painting. "Exactly. You're getting it." His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. I have a good teacher. But what he discovered next changed everything. We fell into a pattern after that. Dinner together. Lessons that spanned multiple hours. Conversations that drifted from art to philosophy to the strange shape of our lives. Ryan told me about growing up in his father's world, about learning to read people as threats or assets, about the weight of carrying a family legacy built on violence and loyalty. I told him about my childhood in a small town downstate, about losing my parents in a car accident when I was 19, about working 3 jobs to put myself through community college before moving to Chicago for the university program I couldn't quite afford. "You never had a choice," Ryan said one night, 3 weeks after the museum visit. "About poverty. About survival. It was just your reality." "The same way violence was yours," I replied, and he nodded slowly. "The same way violence was mine." One evening, Ryan came home with a large wrapped package. He set it on the dining table with unusual care. "For you," he said, and there was something almost nervous in his expression. "Open it." He couldn't explain why, but danger was closing in. I unwrapped it slowly, my hands shaking slightly. Inside was a book, large, heavy, clearly expensive. The Complete Works of Caravaggio, a critical study and catalogue raisonné. I gasped. "Ryan, this is $400, I know, and worth every cent if you'll use it." He leaned against the table. "I saw you reading about him constantly. I thought you might want the definitive collection." I clutched the book to my chest, overwhelmed. "This is too much. Sadie, I spent $12,000 on scotch last month that I didn't drink. $400 for something that makes you happy is nothing." "It's not nothing to me." "I know." He reached out and gently touched the book's leather binding. "That's why I bought it. Because it matters to you. Which means it matters to me." That moment, everything in the room changed. The weight of that statement hung between us. I looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd kidnapped me out of protection, who'd claimed me as a responsibility, who was slowly, carefully showing me pieces of himself he probably hadn't shown anyone. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. The museum, the books, the lessons, all of it. Why do you care? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. Because when I'm with you, I'm not the monster everyone expects me to be. I'm just a man learning about beauty, a student listening to his teacher, someone who might, possibly, be capable of something other than destruction. He met my eyes. You make me want to be better, Sadie. Even though I don't know if better is possible for someone like me. My throat was tight. I don't think you're a monster. You don't know the things I've done. I don't need to. I know who you are right now, in this moment. And that person is good. One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. Something broke in his expression. For just a second, I saw past all his defenses, past the armor he wore like a second skin, to the man underneath. The one who was lonely and tired and desperate for something real in a world built on lies. Then he straightened, the mask sliding back into place, smooth and practiced. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing that, even if it's not true. He left the room before I could argue, before I could tell him that it was true, that I was starting to see him as more than just my protector or my captor, or whatever he was supposed to be. I was starting to see him as Ryan, just Ryan, and that terrified me more than anything else. The lessons continued, but the dynamic had shifted. We sat closer now, on the couch instead of separated by the room. Sometimes our shoulders touched. Sometimes his hand would brush mine when we both reached for the laptop. Neither of us acknowledged it. Neither of us pulled away. What followed next was completely unexpected. 6 weeks after I'd moved in, Ryan asked me something different. Tell me about your dream, he said. We were looking at Botticelli's Birth of Venus, the colors luminous even on my laptop screen. Not the museum curator dream, the real one. The one you think about when you're alone. I hesitated. I want to teach. At a university. I want to help other people see what I see in art. I want to write papers that make people think differently about paintings they've looked at 1,000 times. I want to matter in my field. You will, Ryan said with absolute certainty. You'll publish. You'll teach. You'll change how people understand art. I have no doubt. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen what you do when you talk about something you love. You don't just explain it. You make people feel it. You make them care. He turned to look at me fully. You made me care, Sadie. And if you can do that to someone like me, you can do it to anyone. And then, the gun clicked. The compliment warmed me from the inside out. Thank you. Don't thank me for stating facts. He closed the laptop and I realized he was building up to something. Sadie, I need to take you somewhere tomorrow, somewhere public, a business dinner. I need you with me. My stomach dropped. Why? Because people are starting to ask questions about where I've been spending my evenings, about why I've been leaving early, about the change in my... He stopped, choosing his words carefully. About the change in my temperament. I need them to see you, to understand you're under my protection, that you're... He stopped again. That I'm what? Important to me, he finished quietly. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning we weren't ready to acknowledge. Okay, I said. I'll go. This choice would define the rest of his life. There might be people there who say unkind things, who question why you're with me. Can you handle that? I thought about Jeff, about the customers who'd grabbed at me, about every person who'd ever made me feel small. I can handle it. Ryan studied my face, then nodded. I believe you. Wear something formal. I'll have something appropriate sent to your room. Ryan? Yes? If someone does say something unkind, Let me handle it first. Before you. I gestured vaguely, trying to encompass his entire capacity for violence. Before you do whatever it is you do. Something that might have been pride flickered in his eyes. You want to fight your own battles. I need to. I can't have you destroying everyone who looks at me wrong. I'll never know if I'm actually strong or just protected. Ryan reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch careful, reverent. You're already the strongest person I know, Sadie Hall. Braver than my soldiers, tougher than my enemies. Don't doubt that. His next decision would decide whether he lived or died. Then he stood and left, and I sat alone on the couch, my heart racing, wondering when exactly I'd stopped being afraid of him and started being afraid of how much I was starting to care. The dress arrived at noon. Black, floor-length, elegant without being showy. I put it on at 6, styled my hair into something approaching sophistication, and tried to ignore the way my hands shook as I fastened the delicate silver necklace that had appeared with the dress. Ryan was waiting in the living room, devastating in a black suit with a burgundy tie that matched the coat I'd first seen him in. When I emerged from my room, he went very still. You look breathtaking, he said quietly. You look terrifying. His laugh was unexpected. Good. That's the goal. He offered his arm. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. Someone in the room was lying. But who? The restaurant was the kind of place where a single meal cost more than I used to make in a week. Private dining rooms, waitstaff who moved like ghosts, an atmosphere of wealth so dense you could drown in it. Ryan led me through the main room, his hand on the small of my back, projecting ownership and protection in equal measure. Eyes followed us. Conversations paused. I felt the weight of every stare, every assessment, every judgment. Ryan's private dining room held 6 people already seated. All men except for one woman in a blood-red dress who looked like she could kill someone with her smile. They stood when we entered, and I felt the calculation in their eyes as they evaluated me. Gentlemen, Elena, Ryan said smoothly, his public persona snapping into place like armor. This is Sadie Hall. Sadie, these are my business associates. I shook hands, remembered names, smiled politely. They were cordial but cool, clearly wondering who I was and why I merited Ryan's protection. There was one detail everyone missed. Dinner proceeded with careful conversation. Business discussions that skirted the edge of legality. Political maneuvering. Power plays disguised as pleasantries. I stayed quiet, observing, learning the language of Ryan's world. Until the man across from me, Marcus something, I'd already forgotten his last name, leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. So, Sadie, he said, his voice dripping with false interest. What is it you do? How did you meet Ryan? The table went quiet. This was the test. The moment everyone had been waiting for. I was a waitress, I said calmly. I met Ryan's father first, actually. Helped him when he needed it. Ryan and I met shortly after. A waitress. Marcus's smile widened. How charming. And now you're here, wearing designer clothes, living in Ryan's penthouse. Quite the upgrade. The insult was clear, even wrapped in politeness. I felt Ryan go very still beside me, his hand tightening on his wine glass. In that moment, the entire balance of power flipped. It is an upgrade, I agreed pleasantly. But probably not in the way you think. The biggest difference is that now I'm surrounded by people who use wealth as a weapon instead of survival. I'm not sure which world is actually more brutal. Someone at the table, Elena, I think, made a sound that might have been a laugh. Marcus's smile disappeared. Careful, girl. You're in waters you don't understand. You're right, I said, keeping my voice level. I don't understand your world. I don't understand power for power's sake, or cruelty disguised as business, or why someone would work so hard to make another person feel small. But I don't need to understand it to recognize it, and I'm not afraid of it. Sadie, Ryan started, but I touched his arm gently, stopping him. It's fine, I said, still looking at Marcus. He's testing me, trying to figure out if I'm worth Ryan's time or just another opportunist. It's actually a reasonable question. He couldn't explain why, but danger was closing in. I leaned forward slightly, holding Marcus's gaze. Here's your answer. I don't want Ryan's money. I don't want his power. I don't want his connections or his influence or his protection from the life I built myself. What I want is to finish my degree, become an art historian, and contribute something meaningful to the world. Ryan is helping me do that while I teach him about beauty and art and things that have nothing to do with the violence you all traffic in. If that makes me weak or foolish in your eyes, I don't particularly care. I know my worth, and it has nothing to do with his. The silence at the table was deafening. Then Elena laughed, a real laugh, genuine and surprised. I like her, Ryan. She's got spine. Marcus looked like he'd swallowed glass. You let her speak to your associates like that? Ryan's voice, when he spoke, was colder than I'd ever heard it. I let her speak however she wants. She's not my possession, Marcus. She's my guest. And if you're unclear on the distinction, I'm happy to explain it somewhere more private. But this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. The threat was unmistakable. Marcus paled slightly and looked away. Apologies, he muttered. No offense meant. None taken, I said, though we both knew it was a lie. The rest of the dinner was subdued. Marcus barely spoke. The others treated me with more care, their questions genuine instead of probing. Elena engaged me in a fascinating conversation about Renaissance patronage that revealed she was far more educated than her appearance suggested. When we finally left, Ryan guided me to the car in silence. His driver, sensing the mood, raised the partition immediately. I'm sorry, Ryan said as soon as we were alone. I turned to him, surprised. For what? For Marcus. For putting you in that situation, for not warning you how vicious they could be. Ryan, I handled it. He should have walked away, but then he saw it. I know you did. His expression was troubled. That's what scares me. You stood up to a man who's killed people for less than what you said to him tonight. You didn't flinch. You didn't ask me to protect you. You just handled it. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to be strong? Yes. But watching you do it made me realize how much danger I've put you in. How much more danger there will be the longer you stay with me. He looked away, his jaw tight. Maybe I should let you go. Get you an apartment somewhere far from my world. Keep you safe by keeping you separate. Fear spiked through me, sharp and unexpected. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me. I reached out and gently turned his face back toward mine. Ryan, I chose to stay. I could have left weeks ago. I could have walked away tonight. But I didn't. Because despite everything, the danger, the insanity, the complete upheaval of my life, I don't want to leave. Her next words hit him harder than any bullet. Why? His voice was rough. Why would you choose this? Because you make me feel seen. Because you listen when I talk about art like it actually matters. Because you're trying to learn about beauty in a world built on ugliness. Because when I'm with you, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. I swallowed hard. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about protection and started being about something else. Something I'm not ready to name, but I'm also not ready to walk away from. Ryan stared at me, his dark eyes searching my face. Sadie, don't, I said quickly. Don't say something we're not ready for. Not yet. Just let this be enough for now. He nodded slowly, then did something unexpected. He took my hand and pressed it against his chest, right over his heart. I could feel it racing beneath my palm, fast and hard and real. "You're brave," he said quietly. "Braver than anyone I've ever met. And I will never, ever let anyone hurt you. Do you understand? Not Marcus, not anyone in my world, not even me. You're safe with me, Sadie. Always." This single decision gave him the upper hand again. I believed him. Despite everything, despite all logic and reason, I believed him. "I know," I whispered. "I trust you." Something broke in his expression. He pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me, holding me like I was something precious he was afraid to lose. I leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his strength, his absolute certainty. And I realized, sitting in the back of that car as Chicago blurred past the windows, that I'd been lying to myself. I'd already named what this was. I was falling in love with Ryan Donald. And that was more dangerous than anything else in his world. He didn't realize this moment would come back to haunt him. 3 days after the dinner, Ryan came home early. It was barely 4 o'clock when I heard his keys in the door, and something in the sound made my stomach tighten with anxiety. He appeared in the doorway of the living room where I was studying. Still in his suit, but with his tie loosened and his expression unreadable. "Come with me," he said. "Please." I closed my laptop and followed him through the apartment to his office, the one room I'd never entered. He held the door open for me, and I stepped inside. What he didn't know was that someone was watching. It was exactly what I'd expected. Massive desk, floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood and leather, and the smell of expensive scotch. But what I hadn't expected was the wall of photographs. Security camera stills, mostly. Me at the diner, me in the rain, me driving his father, me walking to my old apartment. A timeline of surveillance that should have terrified me but instead just made me sad. "This is how I found you," Ryan said, gesturing at the wall. Every camera, every angle, every moment from that night documented and analyzed. "I investigated you like a threat, Sadie. I broke into every aspect of your life looking for ulterior motives, for connections to my enemies, for any reason not to trust you. Did you find any? No. All I found was a woman who works herself to exhaustion, studies art history on a broken laptop, and helps strangers in the rain without asking for anything in return." He moved to his desk and pulled out a folder. "I also found these." Hidden in the files was a secret that could destroy them all. He handed me the folder. Inside were documents. My student loans, all stamped paid in full. My credit card debt, zeroed out. The title to my old Honda, now officially in my name. And at the bottom, a check for $50,000 made out to me. "What is this?" I whispered. "Your freedom," Ryan said quietly. "Everything you owe. Cleared. Enough money to finish your degree, get an apartment, start over anywhere you want. No strings. No obligations. No ties to me or my world." My hands were shaking. "Why?" "Because I've been lying to myself." He came around the desk to stand in front of me. "I told myself I was protecting you, keeping you safe, honoring my father's wishes. But the truth is, I wanted you here. I wanted your voice in my home, your passion for art, your strength that makes me feel like I might be capable of something good. I wanted you, Sadie, and I used your vulnerability to keep you." But there was one thing he didn't know about his closest ally. "Ryan, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "What Marcus said at dinner was right. I did upgrade your life. But I did it by taking away your choice, by making you economically dependent on me, by creating a situation where leaving meant going back to Jeff and poverty and struggle. That's not protection. That's control. And you deserve better." Tears were streaming down my face. What are you saying? I'm saying you're free. Take the money. Take your life back. Go anywhere. Do anything. Be anyone. And if you choose to stay, his voice cracked slightly. If you choose to stay, it will be because you want to, not because you have to. Not because I've trapped you with money or protection or obligation. Because you choose me. Freely. Completely. I looked at the folder in my hands, at the freedom it represented, at the life I could have if I walked away. Then I looked at Ryan, this dangerous, complicated man who'd kidnapped me out of protection and taught himself to love art because I loved it. Who'd opened a museum in the middle of the night just to see me smile. Who was now giving me everything I needed to leave him. He trusted her, and that was his biggest mistake. "You're an idiot," I said, my voice thick with tears. He blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "You think I don't know what you did? You think I haven't realized that you changed your entire life around my schedule? That you learn about art you don't care about just to spend time with me? That you come home early and leave late and structure your entire existence around making me feel safe?" I set down the folder. "I've had a choice for weeks, Ryan. I could have demanded you let me go. I could have walked out, but I didn't. Because I chose you. Sadie, I'm not finished." I stepped closer to him. "You're right that you took away my initial choice. You forced me into this situation. But every day since then, I've chosen to stay. I've chosen to teach you. I've chosen to sit with you at dinner and show you paintings and tell you about my dreams. I've chosen all of it. Because despite everything, despite all the chaos and danger and insanity, I want to be here. With you." Ryan looked at me like I'd just told him the sky was falling. "You don't understand what you're saying." For the first time, he wasn't in control. "I understand perfectly. I'm saying I love you, you stubborn, overprotective, surprisingly sweet man. I love you and I choose you, and no amount of money or freedom or logical thinking is going to change that." The words hung in the air between us. Impossible to take back. Ryan stared at me for one more second. Then he moved, closing the distance between us, cupping my face in his hands, and kissing me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. It was desperate and fierce and perfect, every emotion we'd been holding back pouring into that single moment of connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryan rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he whispered. "God help me, I love you so much it terrifies me. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Sadie Hall. The most beautiful, most precious thing in my entire world. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." "You already do," I whispered back. Under the floorboard, he discovered a truth he wasn't ready for. Ryan pulled away slightly, just enough to look at me. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small box. "I was saving this," he said, opening it. "Waiting for the right moment. But there's never going to be a right moment for someone like me to ask someone like you to share their life with me. So I'm just going to ask now." Inside the box was a ring. Antique, delicate, with a diamond that caught the light and threw rainbow fragments across the room. "This was my grandmother's," Ryan said. "The only member of my family who was truly kind, who saw good in people instead of opportunities, who would have loved you on sight." He pulled the ring from the box and held it between us. "Sadie Hall, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. That's a choice for later, when you're absolutely sure. But I am asking you to be mine. Officially. Permanently. To be my partner, my home, my reason for wanting to be better. Will you accept this?" I looked at the ring, then at Ryan, then back at the ring. This was insane. All of it. Falling in love with a mafia boss. Accepting a life built on danger and violence and moral ambiguity. saying yes to a future I couldn't predict or control. But it was also the easiest choice I'd ever made. This choice would define the rest of his life. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll be yours. Completely. Permanently. For as long as you'll have me. Ryan slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. Like everything in my chaotic life had been leading to this moment. He kissed me again, softer this time, reverent. Then he knelt, actually knelt, in front of me, his hands on my waist, looking up at me with an expression of such raw devotion it made my chest ache. Sadie, he said, my name a prayer on his lips. I threaded my fingers through his hair, overwhelmed by the gesture. Get up. Please. You don't have to. I do. His voice was fierce. You deserve to be worshipped. You deserve to have someone kneel at your feet and thank whatever God exists that you chose him. You deserve everything, Sadie. And I'm going to spend my life trying to give it to you. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for family. I pulled him to his feet and into my arms, holding him tightly. We stood there in his office, surrounded by evidence of surveillance and control, choosing love instead. Choosing each other despite all logic. Choosing to believe that beauty could exist in darkness. That love could bloom in dangerous soil. That two people from different worlds could build something real together. Take me home, I whispered against his chest. You are home, Ryan whispered back. You've been home since the moment you stopped in the rain. You just didn't know it yet. 6 months later, I stood in the Art Institute of Chicago, not as a visitor sneaking through in the middle of the night, but as a legitimate intern in the European painting department. My thesis on Caravaggio's revolutionary use of chiaroscuro had been accepted by 3 academic journals. My degree was 2 months from completion. My life was unrecognizable from the exhausted waitress who'd offered a ride to a stranger in the rain. But some things hadn't changed. Ryan still came home every evening for our lessons. Though now they happened in the living room instead of my bedroom, and they often ended with kisses instead of goodbyes. I still wore the antique ring on my finger, though Ryan had started hinting about making it official. And I still felt, every single day, like I was living in a dream I might wake up from. From here on, the rules of the game changed. Sadie, my supervisor, Dr. Martins, called across the gallery. You have a visitor. I looked up from the painting I was cataloging, and my heart did its familiar jump. Ryan stood in the entrance, devastating in his burgundy coat, looking completely out of place and entirely at home at once. What are you doing here? I asked, walking over. It's Tuesday. You're supposed to be in meetings until 6. I rescheduled. He pulled an envelope from his coat. I have something for you. Ryan, if this is another expensive gift, open it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a deed to the diner. The same diner where I'd worked for 3 years, where Jeff had made my life hell, where I'd scraped grease and survived on tips. But the real question was, who planned it? I don't understand, I said slowly. I've owned it since the night I claimed you, but I never told you what I did with it. Ryan's expression was soft. I kept it closed for 6 months, paid the staff severance, made sure everyone who worked there landed somewhere better. And then yesterday, I sold it. To who? A nonprofit that turns abandoned restaurants into workforce training centers for people getting out of poverty. They're going to teach cooking skills, business management, job interview techniques. Everything someone like you would have needed when you were struggling. My vision blurred with tears. Why? Because you changed me. Because you made me see people instead of assets. Because I wanted to honor the woman who stopped for my father by helping other people who stop when help is needed. He cupped my face in his hands. And because I found something in the office when I was clearing it out. Something I've been keeping for you. What she found in the envelope froze her in place. He pulled out another envelope, this one worn and creased. Inside was a pay stub. My pay stub. From my last shift at the diner, 3 days before Ryan had entered my life. I'd thrown it away that night, too exhausted to even look at the pathetic amount I'd earned. "Why do you have this?" I whispered. "Because it reminds me," Ryan said quietly. "It reminds me that the woman I love earned every single thing she has, that she survived on $43.22 for a 12-hour shift, that she chose compassion over self-preservation even when she had nothing to spare, that she's stronger than anyone I've ever met." I was openly crying now, not caring that we were in a public museum, that my supervisor was watching, that Ryan's security detail was undoubtedly hovering nearby. "I love you," I said, the words easier every time I spoke them. "I love you so much." "I love you too." He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me like a shield against the world. "You're home, Sadie. You've always been home. From the moment you said, 'Get in, I'll drive you safe,' you were already mine. I just didn't know it yet." For once, he wasn't thinking like a boss, but like a man about to lose everything. I pulled back enough to look at him fully. "Ask me." "Ask you what?" "You know what." Ryan's eyes searched my face, hope and fear warring in his expression. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, different from the one that had held his grandmother's ring. Inside was another ring, simple and elegant, meant to sit beside the first. "Sadie Hall," Ryan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you marry me? Will you be my partner, my home, my reason for everything? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the gift of your love?" "Yes," I said, laughing through tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He didn't realize this moment would come back to haunt him. He slipped the second ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly beside the first, 2 halves of a whole. Then he kissed me, deep and long and thorough, while somewhere in the background Dr. Martens started applauding, and Ryan's security team pretended not to smile. When we finally broke apart, Ryan whispered against my lips, "You are home, Sadie. My home, my heart, my everything." And standing there in a museum full of beautiful art, surrounded by centuries of human creativity and passion, I realized that we'd become our own masterpiece. Not perfect, not without shadows, but real and true and beautiful in ways that mattered. The poor waitress was gone. The girl who'd scraped grease and survived on tips and dreams of something better had transformed into someone new. Not a queen, not a possession, not a project or a responsibility. Just Sadie. Ryan's Sadie. The woman who'd stopped in the rain and changed 2 lives forever. The woman who'd found her way home. If you felt something while watching, please subscribe. That's how I know these stories mean something to you, even on your TV. Take a second to join our community of story lovers. Your support keeps this world of emotions alive.